Hello! Welcome to a cozy bookish weekend with me, Taryn Tyler. I am a pet sitter, a poet, and a novelist. And this weekend is going to be nice and fun because we are entering the slow season of pet sitting. So I have a lot more time on my hands to read and write and generally relax, which has been quite lovely. This morning, when I got up, I decided to make myself some blueberry muffins. I made some scones a couple weeks ago for in bulk, and ever since then, I've been on a very intense baking kick and just wanting to bake all the time. So I made a recipe for blueberry muffins I got from Six Sisters or something like that. A recipe called for 2 bananas mashed up, 2 eggs, half a cup of honey, 2 cups of flour. I use the protein flour, and a cup of blueberries. And I baked it in the oven at 350 for about 17 minutes and served them with this really, really wonderful blend of tea a friend gave me a couple years ago. That's black tea with rose hips. She called it second breakfast tea, which I think is adorable. And it was just a perfect, lovely little breakfast. I sat down and read some Carl Jung as I enjoyed it. Then I put a couple of the leftover muffins in the microwave for tomorrow, and the rest in the freezer for mornings when I don't have as much time on my hands, which is most mornings. Today I only have one job, so I'm going to take off and do that now. And when I get back, hopefully I will be able to get some writing done. I love my job so much. I had a really nice walk with a very sweet golden retriever. Anytime the dog just turns around and looks at me with this "I'm happy you're here" look on its face, I just get so happy. I get so happy that I get to do what I do. I remember the first time Bronte gave me that look. She was sitting in her playpen, and it was, I think, the second day after I brought her home, and she just like gave me these shiny "I'm happy you're here" eyes. And I was just like, my baby. And I'm so happy that I get to work with animals every day who are happy that I'm there with them. So now I'm going to take my puppy out to play. It's just we just got over a few rainy days, so it's a little damp out, but at least it's dry enough to take her out. She really needs to go out because she's been cooped up for several days because of the rain. So that will be good for her. And then I'm going to wrap some gifts and write for a little bit. I've really been enjoying writing out the D&D campaign that I've been playing. It's been a really fun writing exercise because takes some of the pressure off of writing, because I've been writing for myself since I was 13. I wrote my first short story when I was 13, and I started my first novel then, and I finished it at 15, and I've written 6, 7, 8 novels since then. I've only published a couple of them, but I've been writing and writing and writing for my entire adult life. I've only been publishing the last 10, 12 years. And in the beginning, I didn't really notice the pressure. I was just, I wrote these things and I'm going to share them with the world. And only the last couple of years have I started to feel like that pressure of really needing to perform for an audience and write what they want to read and make sure it's perfect this way and perfect that way, and it doesn't have any of this in it and it has some of that in it, and just being concerned about how people are going to react to everything I write. So it's nice to have something to write where I can still have that joy of bringing the words together and crafting a story, and I don't know, just like the buzzing of everything clicking together in your head that I get from writing. But because I'm writing a campaign from a story that's already kind of drafted by someone else, it's not something I will ever be able to market. And so because I will never be able to market it, it's it gives me a sense of freedom to just do what I want and what feels good and what feels right for the story, because this isn't for an audience, it's for me. Also having it be a collective story where, you know, the other players and the DM and of course people who wrote the original module are all contributing to it. It also gives me a freedom of not being in control. Because I'm not in control, I don't have to be in control, so there's less stress and I don't have to be worried about it. So I've been enjoying that a lot. And you are welcome to read it. I send out chapters every month through my newsletter, but it's free. It's not something that's ever going to be marketed. It's not something that needs to appeal to a large amount of people or anyone really, except for me and, of course, the other people who are playing. So I'm going to work on that today. And yeah. Bronte was so excited to go out. It was really fun to be able to take her out and play with her after all that rain. She was cooped up for way too long. I wrapped my partner's Valentine's Day gift because today is Valentine's Day. That's why my hair is like this. I'm going out later tonight, so I want it curled. We're gonna go see Wicked, which I am super excited about. I've never seen it live before, and it's been way too long since I've been to the theater. I had a really good writing session. This is my journal that I write down notes of my D&D adventures as we play. So as we play, I dictate key points for the adventure and snippets of especially great dialogue, and then what is usually months later, I will sit down and type it all up and make it into more of a story form. So I finished a chapter of that, and I worked on a poem that I wrote about self-love. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and read the poem to you. I can be moonlight, scattered light, fractured and opaque, reflecting the fire scorching in my soul. Fragments drift in kaleidoscopes of dreams, swirling in humanity's angry tangle. A mirror of brokenness shatters. Visions drip, soaking into my being. Clusters of wisdom obscured by reality. Splintered pieces of my soul gather, glowing in the soft warmth of acceptance and glimmering in glorious imperfection. The poem was actually largely inspired by the book Lucy Undying by Kirsten White. And let's see if I can find the line, because I like to have a reading journal with me when I read. Honestly, I wrote down so many lines from Lucy Undying in my reading journal because she writes beautifully. That's all I can say. Here it is. Here's the line that the poem is partially inspired by. I was always good at moonlight, though, because moonlight isn't real either. It's just a wan reflection of someone else's light. So I wanted to write about being a reflection, but in my poem, it's not a reflection of someone else's light. It's a reflection of your own light that you're afraid to show. You're not able to share like your whole light with the world, but you can show them little pieces and reflections and bits. So I'm going to get ready and make a nice dinner. Usually I just eat like cheese and crackers or macaroni and cheese or something for dinner. Keep it really simple, easy. But today's special. We're going out. So I'm going to make a nice dinner, and I guess I'll see you when I get back from Wicked. For our Valentine's Day dinner, I made ziti, which is the first dinner that my partner made me when we first started dating. He gave me this gorgeous wax kit, and Wicked was, unsurprisingly, fantastic. It is such a phenomenal musical. I love the character contrast between Elphaba and Glinda, and just how different they are, but also the same. For me, Wicked is a really important musical because it questions the importance of appearance, particularly for women, and shows that there is no one right way to be a woman. Today, I'm going to go to Solvang with my mom, which is exciting. I haven't been on a trip away by myself for quite a while, and I've never been to Solvang before. My mom says it's very adorable little like old world type village, so I'm excited to see that. But first, I must answer a very important question, and that is, what am I going to bring to read? As any reader knows, even if you're not sure if you're going to have time to read it all, you need to have a book with you, just in case. But I already finished reading Lucy Undying, so now I need to choose my next book. I have a stack of books here that is my immediate TBR. I have 2 shelves of books that I haven't read, but I tend to forget what's on there, and so I get paralyzed by choice. So I keep 3 or 4 on a stack right here to kind of narrow it down a little bit when I'm choosing my next book, and so I don't have stacks of books all over the place to remind myself they exist, because I used to do that, where I would just pull out books and be like, oh yeah, I haven't read that one yet, I need it to be out so I remember, and then I would just have stacks of books all over the place. So it's 1 stack, and there's a limit to how many can be in the stack. But also sometimes I just remember a book that is on the shelf and I pull that out and read it next. There's no actual rules. It's just a little bit of a system to kind of help me make a choice. Currently in the stack, we have The Trinity Knot by H.R. Conklin, How to Love the World, Poems of Gratitude and Hope, Axiom's End by Lindsay Ellis, Selected Writings of Christine D. Pizan, and The Rise of Kyoshi by Yi. There's only the last name on the bind the I keep wanting to say the binding. Is that right? How to Love the World, Poems of Gratitude and Hope is kind of not really a book you read straight through. It's just like a book you pick up and peck at now and again. And I have been pecking at it the last 2 months or so. So I don't think that's the one to choose next, because I am kind of already into it. Another book that I'm kind of into, but it's nonfiction, is Symbols and Interpretations of Dreams by Carl Jung. It's kind of an interesting thing to read work by an author who is partially outdated, but there's still some little bits of interesting information, new ideas in there. So it's kind of a lesson of discernment as you're reading, where you're just like, that thought is silly and outdated. Oh, that one's interesting. I could look into that one. And just, you don't take everything the author says as, which should always be the case. You should never be reading nonfiction and just assume everything any writer says is correct. But I think something written that long ago by someone in a specific type of culture is maybe more that case, but there's still some interesting things in there, and I find dreams really interesting. I want to take up dream journaling again, which is something I used to do to get in touch with myself more. So I've been enjoying reading it, but again, it's not fiction. It's not like a it's a very specific mood, and you pick at it slowly. It's going to take probably a month or so for me to read. Selected writings of Christain. I feel like I already have something heady to read in my in Carl Jung, and I already have some poetry to read in How to Love the World. So that's not the choice for right now. Axioms, and I don't know if I'm in a sci-fi mood. I I don't read a lot of sci-fi, but every once in a while I get in the mood. But I'm pretty picky about my sci-fi. I love Lindsay Ellis's uh, video essay work, so I want to read that eventually, hopefully sooner rather than later. It's actually signed. I got it signed at Comic Con this last year, but I don't think that's the right mood for right now. Similarly, I'm not really in an Avatar mood, so I think The Rise of Kyoshi is also not going to be the choice for me right now. It's another book that I am really excited to read, but I want to pick a book that's matching my current mood. I'm just coming off of a heavy gothic kick, but maybe I want something a little lighter than the gothic stuff. So I think that leaves The Trinity Knot by H.R. Conklin. I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. She's a local author, and I've taken a workshop with her before over Zoom. She wasn't teaching the workshop, but she was in the workshop with me. She seems like a really cool, down to earth girl, um, and I've been interested in checking out her book. I bought this at a local book fair a year ago, not a year ago now. I mean, it's Celtic, and it's the first in the series. That's mostly all I know about it. Let's see. Be wary the gifts the fairies may give. Ooh, it's fairies. I mean, that makes sense if it's Celtic. After the death of their father, 15-year-old Mari is forced to spend the summer with her younger brother and the estranged grandfather in the rural mountains of Northern California. Expecting to be miserable, separated from her cell phone and her friends, Mari instead finds herself drawn into a world of magic straight out of the Celtic fairy tales from her childhood. Facing fairy curses and vengeful druids, a trip back in time to Scotland of long ago threatens to become even more dangerous than anticipated when her cousin Danny shows up with his own agenda, and time is running out to reverse the curse a fairy has put on their family. Life wasn't ever going to be the same without her father. Mari never expected she was part of a magical legacy. Sounds interesting. It sounds maybe a little bit like the Afterworld series by K.M. Rice, which I adore. I think this is going to be a good choice. Something kind of light for as we're getting into spring. I'm excited. New book to try. Trip to Solvang. It has been so far a very, very good weekend. Solvang is a Danish village in the Sanna Ynez Valley wine country that was established by Danish immigrants in the early 1810s to create a place where they could preserve and promote their culture. Sanna Ynez Valley was originally populated by the indigenous, forgive me if I'm saying this wrong, Chumash, who, according to Wikipedia, were fishers and hunters with a phenomenal astrological system. The area was then taken over by the Spanish, and Mission Santa Ynez was established as a satellite of the overcrowding Mission Santa Barbara in the 1700s. After the Mexican War of Independence, when California became part of the US, the mission was disbanded, and in 1810, 3 Danish immigrants purchased the area so they could create a community of Danish settlers. The name Solvang means sunny fields in Danish. Today, the town is known for its Danish-style architecture, but it wasn't until the 1940s, more than 100 years after the settlement was established, that the town began building in the Danish style, largely because of the growing interest in the community by tourists. As much fun as my mom and I had meandering around looking at old novelty items and enjoying all the amazing food, it's hard to deny that these days most of the town is more for the benefit of tourists than the Danish immigrants. Although, if you look closely enough, you can still find pieces of history being preserved and celebrated. Of course, the Hans Christian Andersen Museum inside the book loft was a necessity for me to visit. There were so many beautiful editions of Hans Christian Andersen's work. For all his flaws as an individual, Hans Christian Andersen writes such beautiful fairy tales with such a depth of emotion that I can't help but love his work. And of course, I brought home a copy from the bookstore so that I can read The Little Mermaid and The Little Match Girl and Snow Queen anytime I want, and also so I can remember the trip. Solvang, like many places in the US, has a complicated history. And while I'm glad that Danish immigrants had a place to be completely themselves and engage with their own culture, I am still sad to see the loss of the indigenous cultures in the area. There is so much of the indigenous cultures in the States that has been lost. And sadly, that is largely by design of the colonizers. So I was really glad to see the Natural Art Museum alongside of all of the Danish cultural shops and food places. It didn't have information of the Chumash people or their culture, but the land is part of what was there from the beginning. So having a place that celebrates art about nature is a step towards acknowledging the more complicated and layered history of the town. On the way home, we stopped in Santa Barbara for lunch and enjoyed the beautiful coastal view. I've always lived near the beach, and I don't think I could live somewhere that was too far away from the beach. To me, it would just feel like living in a house with no windows. I don't go to the beach very often, but I like to know it's there. As it turned out, bringing the Trinity knot was perfect because it is the story of a girl who travels north in California. So it seemed appropriate for me to be reading as I was traveling north in California. It's the story of a young girl who finds out that her family is from a long line of druids. I would recommend it to anyone who enjoys the YA feel of a teen learning magic, but doesn't want to support you know who, or anyone who just loves druids and Scottish culture. So that was my exciting bookish weekend. Not every weekend is like that by a long shot. I got to go see a musical, I got to travel a little bit, read some amazing books, get some new books, learn about some history, do some baking. But I've been enjoying having a little more time off right now, and it just reminded me to be grateful for the life I have and all of the love and opportunities that I have in my life. I hope you are enjoying your love and opportunities and having a fantastic, amazing, wonderful bookish week. Bye. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider subscribing to Ink Spills if you enjoy fairy tales, gothic literature, poetry, book recommendations, or writing.